I would encourage you not to set up a situation where it's any kind of power differential, if that makes sense. You're not a kid begging your parent to let you do something. This is one adult partner being brave and vulnerable enough to share themselves. That's powerful.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 10 of Focus Fridays. We're Finn and Emma, and as usual, if you're not your normal
self, it's because it's a Friday and you just got fucked over all week at work.
I can't say that.
You don't have to. I just said it.
Okay. If you aren't a normal listener to our show, this is not...
Hey, all of our listeners are normal.
Yeah, okay. If you aren't a regular listener to our show, we typically interview people and have them share their stories of exploring non-monogamy. This is not that. This is a specific topic-based episode. And today we're talking about bringing up non-monogamy to your partner.
Yes, ma'am. And real quick, if you're looking for the other 9 episodes, you can obviously find them. They've all been published now. So there's really no incentive to do what I'm about to tell you.
But if you still want to do it, that's awesome.
Because I promise if you do it, you will feel really good about yourself.
Yep.
And there's only one way to prove me wrong, and that's to do it.
And not feel good?
And then email me and tell me you don't feel good.
Okay,
So what you can do is you go to the normalizingnonmonogamy.com website on the internet. You click on the courses tab. Then once you're there, you're going to find a link. It's going to take you to a place. That place is going to let you download all 10 episodes at once, even though you already could, but you're going to get them all at once.
All together.
And it's going to give you the opportunity to make a contribution to help the show and to support all of the contributors who helped us make this possible. Oh, don't you feel good now?
Yeah, so go do that.
I feel like I was getting paid $4.99 a minute to...
I feel like you were too. That could have been good. Anyway, thank you to everyone in advance for doing that. It's awesome.
And thank you to all of the contributors who made this series possible. We're super excited to have put it together. And, hopefully we got a season 2 on the horizon.
Yeah, we hope so.
All right. So anyway, what are we talking to Catherine about? Sorry, we got a little ahead of ourselves.
So Catherine, as we mentioned in episode 2 of the Focus Fridays, she is a counselor and relationship coach, and she's on episode 57 as well with her husband, Ray. Her business is Expansive Connections. Links will be in the show notes. A few other quick notes. We have 4 voicemails in this episode, and the sound quality does change slightly with the callers, as you'll notice. We do reference that Casey and Laura are some of the callers, and they are episode 105, also in the show notes. And we also reference Mr. and Mrs. Sting. Their podcast is Just Keep Swinging. So again, links to all of that will be in the show notes. I think that's it.
I think so. I think we did it.
Let's go hear our conversation and hopefully give everyone some tips and tricks.
Okay. All right. Well,
Catherine's back.
Back again. 3rd time.
Hi.
So this time we're in the trenches, lessons from people who called in, left us voicemails, or wrote in to you, Catherine, about ways that they've brought up non-monogamy. Specifically, these are mostly swinging related, but I think some of the tools are applicable across the board. But so we've got some voicemails to listen to, and then we're going to kind of talk about what they did, what they should have done maybe, or what they could have done different and better. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Sounds great. Yeah.
All right. And should we give Catherine a quick moment to introduce yourself again, just in case people haven't caught you on the first 2 times, and then we'll jump into it?
Yes, please.
I'll do a super short one and say you got to listen to the others to hear the real deal.
Perfect, yeah.
But my name is Catherine. I have been a counselor for 15 years. Right now, though, my work is focused in the coaching realm, and I coach relationships. non-monogamous relationships mostly, helping people navigate the surprise things that come up for them is probably the best way to say it, and helping them use those, what they come to me calling struggles, how to use these quote struggles to either to continue on in non-monogamy or not, but the goal being that they feel closer to each other. So I do one-on-one and some group coachings offerings and speak at some events. And I also am a yoga teacher and teach some sensual couples yoga classes with my business. My business is called Expansive Connection.
Awesome.
Cool.
And you are yourself exploring it with your husband. So you have firsthand experience. You're not just sitting on the outside looking in at us in the fishbowl.
Right. I go beyond non-monogamy friendly. I am one of you.
But you only do it for professional reasons. We understand.
Right. Well, at least that's what it looks like on my taxes. I'm going to all of these events, for business purposes.
Of course.
Exactly. Well, we won't tell anybody. All right, let's jump into the first one, and then we'll talk about it.
Hey, I think I'm on. Okay. Hi, Emma and Finn. My name is Mike. I am not a long-time listener, but definitely an avid listener and first-time caller. So you want to hear about how people talk to their partners about opening up their relationships. And I was pretty ass backwards in the way that I did it. For kind of the beginning of my relationship with my now fiance, I had, I'd always brought up like swinging as a possibility or introducing a third partner, but I never really told her I actively wanted to do it. I just said, hey, is this something that you would be into? Or I would put on a documentary or something like that while we were just relaxing. And I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. They do that. Do you think you could ever do that or whatever, something like that? Or, show her a little bit of porn that had something in it. And I kind of gauged her responses to that, which wasn't a definite, yeah, let's do it. But it was more of a, yeah, I'd have to see, but I think, I'm not opposed to it. So with that, I kind of didn't bring it up very frequently, but I had found myself on a trip for work recently, back in March now. And while I was on that trip, I ended up interacting with a young lady who there was definitely a connection there, which isn't something that's frequent with me. I mean, I am, a talkative person. I'm a charming person. And, even if someone's been into me, I've always been like, oh, well, I have a girlfriend or I have a fiance. We're good. But she and I definitely had some sort of chemistry, and it left me feeling guilty just that the chemistry was there. We didn't do anything physical, and we didn't even talk about doing anything either. So when I had gotten back to my home in New York, I spoke to my fiance and I said, I feel super guilty about just being attracted to this other person. And she was like, well, thank you so much for telling me. And I'm like, yeah, I know that you said you would have liked to have tried opening up the relationship. I don't even think I used that term then. I was so uneducated. I probably said poly. I probably said, I know you said you'd be open to being polyamorous. Do you think you might want to start trying to get into it? A little bit more context. She and I had just had a pregnancy scare prior to that, and it kind of went over my head. I was like, all right, well, you're not pregnant. We're good. And then went from there. But she was like really freaking out over it. And the first thing I did was bringing another person into our relationship, or at least allowing me to be with another person outside of our relationship. And that didn't really go over well. And I have an obsessive personality. So once I start getting into something, I learn everything about it. And she was like, well, yeah, I know I said, I've said that I might be into that, but, now's not really the time. And I was like, okay. And then I searched up polyamory on my podcast app. I came across Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast. And from there is when I started learning everything I could. And through listening to other people's stories, and then, listening to Life on the Swing Set and the Multiamory podcast, that was when I discovered, wow, I really approached this the wrong way. So I went a while without talking to her about it and learned everything I could about how other couples have done it, all the different ways, the different distinctions under the umbrella of ethical non-monogamy. And when I felt I was more educated, that's when I brought her into it again and started talking to her about it. And we are kind of in the beginning steps of opening up our relationship. And she's talking to someone, which is amazing. And, there's plans for them to actually be physical at some point in the future. And I'm working through that. And I'm talking to a couple of someones as well. That is also a possibility. So, it was a very backwards way to go into it, but I was able to kind of educate myself, learn more, and go from there. So that's how we did it. Mike from New York. Thanks a lot for putting out the podcast, guys. Listen every week. Totally love it. Keep doing the work you're doing. Have a good one, guys.
All right. So first of all, Mike, thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable to share with us and the 7 million listeners what went down. But I guess on your end, Catherine, the first thing, the strategy about sort of bringing it up little bits at a time, finding a documentary, sort of like leaking bits and pieces. How do you feel about that as a strategy?
Yes, Mike, thank you so much for your vulnerability to share that. I think that doing a little, I like how you said leaked it, and I think I would think of it kind of like gauging the interest. I think doing that a little bit at the beginning is not a bad strategy, just to sort of gauge the reaction, see if this is a hell no or a maybe, or God, I thought you'd never ask, or did you read my mind? I mean, because that is certainly going to inform how you move forward. What I think I would say, if I could have been in Mike's ear coaching him from the get-go, would be that continuing to leak this and drop hints or gently gauge, after a while, I think that he missed an opportunity early. He got there, but missed opportunities early along the way, to really be seen and heard and understood and loved anyway. And as we've talked about last time that I was on your podcast, that's what most all of us humans want: seen, heard, understood, and loved anyway. And so this whole yes, so I heard there are some swingers that live down the street. What do you think about them? Instead of saying, I am curious about non-monogamy, hiding behind these gauging strategies is a missed opportunity to feel really heard by his girlfriend in that way.
Well, right. And you may never, if you say it the first way, and if you're just kind of like putting these things on, and your partner may be thinking, wow, that looks awesome and super fun, but I don't want to say that because I don't know what they're thinking.
Right.
And so you at a certain point, the drip, drip, drip is okay, but you kind of have to get to a point where you're like, hey, I really thought that was interesting. I'd be open to talking more about that. If you have to give them something to make them feel safe to talk to you as well.
Absolutely. I also wanted to give Mike huge kudos for being so honest about his interaction on the business trip.
Yeah.
I thought that part of it was just amazing.
I agree. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And in some ways, that's the first toe in of non-monogamy, right? To admit that we think that we're attracted to other people. Oh my goodness. Think about how many monogamous couples, not all, but many monogamous couples would be terrified to say that or to know that about their partner. And so great way to start to be honest. And it sounds like, other than the timing, which of course is everything, that openness and that honesty helped her probably feel really comfortable and confident with Mike that he was coming about this from a place of openness and honesty, and was able, and also kudos to his fiance, who was able to meet him with such grace and openness, and then they connected over that openness.
Right. Mm-hmm. Rather than having her just jump to be like, oh, well, you just want to do this because you want to go bang the girl from your business trip. Right. Because that's an easy place to jump to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think his point of where he did kind of mess it up was timing. You know, he could have improved the timing on bringing that up and make sure that his fiance was in a better place and that the two of them were past that pregnancy scare and just in a maybe in a little better place before dropping that ball.
I would blame that on being a dumb dude who doesn't know the impact of we're part of the pregnancy as well, but it's not our body. It's not so it was probably a way bigger deal to her, obviously, than it was to him. And not that that's an excuse, but
sure. Or another thing I would say is that it might be, Mike admitted that he had a bit of a obsessive personality, that if he was in some way sort of obsessing about this and thinking about it was taking up so much brain space, he may not have been as available to be sensitive to or open to what was going on with her. And so I think that that's probably a good lesson moving forward, for people looking at this, to say, just because you've been thinking about this so much doesn't mean that your partner has. And in all you're thinking about this, all within your own head, have you missed anything? So start from that place of connection. How have you been? Like level 3, not the surface level schedules, blah, 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 but like, what's going on in your soul? What's going on in your heart to, again, start this from a place of connection?
Yeah. Well, and you know, what he did when he went and found every podcast under the sun and did that. And I think, first of all, like, that's amazing, right? That you go and you get super educated on this. But when you go back to your partner, you have to remember that they probably haven't done that. And so if you show up and you're like, here's 740 podcasts, I'm ready to talk about them when you're done listening. And then you're sitting there like, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? Are you done?
Maybe you should listen to like 2 or 3 and then give them to your partner so that...
Well, I mean, or listen to them all, but you just have to understand when you show up and say, here's 17 weeks worth of research I've done. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, oh, so we're already doing this. They assume you're already in.
They're not in the same place.
Absolutely. Well, also they say, oh, this is your thing.
Yeah.
Again, it isn't starting as a team. So sure, I mean, always research is great, but I always would encourage people, again, if I could get in their ear earlier, don't do so much research before you bring it, because then it's almost like it's created a separation between the two of you, because now you have all this knowledge and they don't. It could almost feel like a betrayal, or like you and all your podcast people are ganging up on her, you know?
Yeah.
So do that research and explore together, so it continues to soothe that attachment worry, where your partner knows we are doing this as a team. Right.
Yeah.
Not just so I can go bang the lady from my business trip.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Approach it as a team from the very beginning. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I think overall, I mean, yeah, off to a rocky start, but sounds like they've reeled it in and they're figuring it out. And it's super exciting that they're on the same team now, it seems. And
I'd say his overall strategies weren't terrible, but he could have maybe corrected a few missteps here and there.
Yeah. And, you know, with all that research, at least he knows where to go to get help along the way as he's starting, as they're moving through. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So kudos, Mike. Rocked it.
Yes. Okay. Voicemail number 2. Let's go.
Slightly shorter.
The topic of non-monogamy came up with my husband and I after he had asked for a threesome over several years. And not really asking, I wouldn't say that. He kind of just like brought up how cool it would be. And then when I was ready, I said, well, I'd like to try to just be with a girl to see if that's something that I would even be interested in. And so we started listening to a ton of podcasts after a girl that I was talking to recommended it, because we never even thought about the lifestyle before that. And then I kind of brought up how fun it sounded and how different and unique. And he really liked it, but he denied to like it. He was just like, oh, I'd love to like talk to these people and go to parties and see what they're like, because I'm sure they have cool stories. But really, I think he was more interested than what he let on to be. And then we had the experience with the girl. He wasn't involved, but he watched. And then we decided that it was more fun if there was more interaction. And so we went to a swinger party and we played with each other and we kind of watched all that happen. And I think we're getting more comfortable with the lifestyle. But essentially, podcasts. Lots and lots and lots of podcasts like yours.
All right. Again, testing the water, but just going at the, how cool would that be, bro?
Absolutely. So again, kind of missing that opportunity to be seen and heard and understood and loved anyway, instead of actually saying, this is me and this is what I want and this is what I'm interested in. Can you handle me?
Yeah.
Can you love me anyway?
It does sound like they've slowly been stepping their toes in, which I think is a good strategy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they went to a party or a club and were with each other and just went to check it out. And I think that's a really good strategy too, because then you can go and experience and see if it's even something you would want to continue with or not. Yeah. Like go in without the expectation of playing with others.
I was just going to say, I will say, though, that the strategy of bringing it up and saying how cool it would be, I mean, it obviously made her feel like when she was ready, she could bring it back up to him. So it can't fault it.
Absolutely. Again, I don't think that that's a bad way again to gauge it, because he was definitely saying he wasn't doing it in the judgy, like, have you heard about those swingers in the neighborhood? He was saying it with, I think it's cool, but it was still hiding behind, it was closer, but there's still a little bit of holding back. Another thing I want to mention is that, I think when people are a little scared to show that, of course, I guess it's the fear of hearing no. But I think that it can be important to know that when people say, if this woman had said, no, I'm not interested, that doesn't mean, and I think you're a freak.
Right.
It just means, I do understand that you want that, and I can see it, and I can hear you, and I can understand, I can love you anyway. And it doesn't necessarily mean what I want, that I would want to do. Luckily, it didn't seem to happen that way. But I also liked how she said, here is what I would be comfortable with. And so she brought up, like, kind of set a boundary in that way. Like, I'm not willing to jump all in, but here's what I would be interested in and comfortable exploring. I really liked how she set those boundaries for herself in that way.
And something else that kind of maybe went over people's heads is that he brought this up as, being cool over the course of a couple of years. He presumably wasn't bringing this up every other day, being like, how about that cool threesome? How about, like at a certain point, she's like, yeah, dude, I fucking heard you yesterday and the day before and this morning at breakfast. So you have to space that out, and
patience.
Yeah. Patience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I also loved that they listened to the podcast together, as I was saying from last time. So that was great. One of the tips that I give some of my clients, and they always laugh at me, and I always just own it that I'm a nerdy counselor type, but I encourage people to schedule podcast dates. And so to use this as conversation starters. So like, you set a date, you pick an episode, you both listen to it on your own and kind of do some homework, type some note, or, tap out some notes on your phone, and then sit down for some juicy conversation, because it can help to externalize it. Like, oh, well, when Emma said this and then Finn did that, I thought, yeah, I could totally get where he was coming from. So they could talk about you guys while gently starting to open up to what their true desires are. And, they're like, really? You and your husband would talk about a podcast on a date? I'm like, it's better than talking about our kid or my mom or our holiday schedules. Like, I could think of worse conversations on date nights.
Well, and it could go, to some really deep conversations and also lead to some fun fantasy too. Like there's a lot of ways that could go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for calling in and for sharing the story and for the uncanny impression of your husband. I thought it was spot on. I haven't. And I hope he does too. All right. Next up.
Hey, Emma and Finn. I just wanted to give you guys a call and let you know how my wife and I brought up non-monogamy in our relationship. So we've been together for 20 years, married 11. And in order to spice up our sex life, we decided we both really enjoyed reading erotica. And so we would find stories that we found very interesting or were a big turn on for us, and we would text back and forth stories and kind of get us charged up and kind of extended foreplay throughout the day, and that would usually lead to fun times in the bedroom. A few times it happened where, for whatever reason, we tried and just couldn't find any stories that appealed to either one of us. And so I remember laying in bed one night, and it was one of those nights where we didn't find any stories. I asked my wife to just recall one of her more sexy memories, from years past that I wasn't involved in. So we did that a few times, and I found it was a really big a turn on for me for to hear about these experiences that didn't involve me. And yeah, she could tell I really got a charge out of it. So one night she told me a particularly good story, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And she noticed it very much so and said, wow, you'd really like to see me do that, wouldn't you? And I remember being just absolutely shocked and stunned, but at the same time, so excited at the idea. So that's kind of how the conversation started. And it didn't lead to us, getting in, becoming non-monogamous right away. It really was just a very slow build up of, her saying, yes, we enjoyed the fantasy, but that's just kind of it right now. This will never really happen in real life, but it's a lot of fun. So let's keep talking about it. And slowly that escalated, and we decided that, that it did sound fun. So here we are today, non-monogamous and loving every moment of it. So that's our story. It's an ever-evolving story, and one that we both really enjoy having together. One idea, I remember hearing a podcast where this sort of thing was asked about before, well, how do I ask my partner, or how do I bring this up? And we're all afraid to bring it up, in fear that our partner may really reject it or think differently of us and really change the dynamic of the relationship just because of a simple question or something. So one idea that I always thought would work well is bringing it up as a dream, something, as simple as, hey, I had this dream last night. It was crazy, and this and this and this happened. And wow, isn't that crazy? What do you think of that? And it gives you a nice out because it's your subconscious. It has, really it's not something you've been thinking about. It's just happened. So I thought that would be a creative way, to bring up non-monogamy in a relationship. Anyways, I just wanted to share our quick little story. Yeah, I hope you guys liked it, and keep doing what you guys are doing. You're probably one of my favorite podcasts. Always a joy when I wake up and I've got a notification that there's a new one out to listen to. So keep up the good work, guys. Thanks.
Well, first of all, thank you, as always, for calling in. And for people who are astute followers of the show, they may have heard a little bit of this story before on a recording we did with Casey and Laura.
Yes.
So, spoiler alert, you can hear a lot more detail on this one if you listen to a previous episode.
I really liked how they looked to ways to spice up their relationship and were telling each other stories and looking for erotic stories. That's a really fun way to spice up your sex life. And then it kind of snowballed from there. I mean, it could or it could not, right?
Well, again, love the team. They decided together how they wanted to do it, a way that both of them would feel comfortable. I also like to remind people that even that is a bit of a form of non-monogamy, right? You're inviting other people into your bedroom virtually in your imagination. You're talking about other people. And I think sometimes people think that non-monogamy only happens when you're physical with another person, when you're having an emotional connection with, when you're texting with someone. What is the start of it? And if it had just stayed in that, for them to have been able to have a very full sex life based on adding that part, agreeing how to make this more enjoyable together.
Yeah, and being able to share stories. And, again, this is sort of that maybe some of the stories have elements of threesomes or orgies or non-monogamy in them, but not every single story is built around that. And then, I think the idea of bringing it up and hey, would you be interested in telling me something that you've done from your past? That's not a bad way to go. I mean, you do have to be prepared that they're no, why would I want to tell you about that? But it's kind of a non-threatening way to kind of have a peek into that.
Well, and I thought that was a really interesting idea too. And it's interesting, I guess, thinking about it from where I work, the kind of the ends of things that I work, because so often people come to me dealing with jealousy, that asking to hear about a past lover could be a really great way to gauge and kind of have a litmus for what if you may experience jealousy later. Because I think that probably an ex-lover would have the potential to bring up as much, if not more, jealousy even than a partner that you choose together. Or if you're doing this in a more adult way, thinking back, we've all thought about Ray's ex-girlfriend was really tiny and I'm tall. Did he like that better? We all, I think, have had some insecurities when we look at our partner's exes. So that's an interesting way, not only to bring it up, but I think for the person ready to hear that story as a way to have a litmus about their level of jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And again, being wary that first time they may not want to go into all the details because they're going to be afraid of freaking you out, right? If they're telling you oh yeah, I came 75 times and you've never, you don't want that. They're probably not going to go there on the first time, or maybe they are. I don't know.
What advice would you give someone to, if they brought it up and asked her partner, and their partner was like, "Oh hell no, I'm not talking about that." What would you say? I'm asking both of you.
Well, again, yeah. I mean, I think it's. I would go straight to exploring what's going on. Like, oh, I can hear that feels scary for you. What are you nervous about? What are you nervous my reaction would be? Have I made it feel unsafe to say these things to me? Or is it another partner that was like, I hate all your ex-boyfriends? What's going on there? And so if you feel shut down, this is one of my little cues. Try to get curious, not furious.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Awesome.
How about you, Finn? Any other advice for that?
Yeah, I think that, and then being able to say, hey, if you're not comfortable tonight, like we can table it, revisit it, bring it up when you're comfortable. If you want to talk about it again, I'm always happy to hear about it, but I don't want you to feel like you have to.
Kind of goes back to the being patient thing.
Yeah.
Which leads to another thing I thought that this couple did well is the slow build up. In general, I think it's always probably best served to go at the pace of the more hesitant partner so that no one feels pushed or rushed or in over their head, because then all you're going to get is a fear response. And that is more of a contraction than an expansion.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe the last piece to touch on is the dream strategy, which I think much like the erotica strategy and the all of the other things, the drip, right? I think that it's a good way to do it, but you have to be able to at a certain point say like, I had another one of those dreams and, I found it really sexy. I didn't think I would, but I really did. Like you have to be able to, again, shed light on what you're feeling.
Absolutely. Just not hiding behind your fear of being rejected for too long. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention about that one is he mentioned something about being a little scared to change the dynamic. And I hear this a lot, like, oh, well, what if bringing this up changes us or we can't recover from it? And one of the things that I always like to remind people in relationship is that not being honest with your partner about who you really are will change the dynamic of the relationship, because you, drip by drip, if you will, stop bringing your most authentic self to your partner. So yes, bringing it up and sharing fully may change some things. But if you know that about yourself and you're not willing to be vulnerable and open with your partner, that's going to change the dynamic too. So it's not like one's the easy choice and one's the hard. They're both scary and difficult. But don't think you just, by not saying anything, everything will just stay the same.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
One more recording and then a couple of other surprises.
And a couple messages. Okay.
Hi, I'm Mr. Sting.
And I'm Mrs. Sting.
And we're here to record our story of how we brought up the lifestyle to each other for non-monogamy. And that was all started by you, wasn't it, Mrs. Sting?
Yeah, it started with me about 30 years ago. I was working with my best friend and we'd have conversations. And one day we were talking about how you love blowjobs. And she said she loves to give blowjobs, but her husband at the time didn't like blowjobs. And I said, well, he just hasn't had a good one. Maybe I need to give him one. So we made arrangements that night. And
basically you brought it up to me. So we didn't think about it as being non-monogamous or anything. It was just, we were all friends already.
Yeah.
We already spent time together. And it was just like, I just remember you telling me, okay, tonight they're coming over. You're supposed to wear sweatpants and she's going to give you a blowjob and I'm going to give him a blowjob and we'll see what's what. And
nothing happened.
Nothing happened. I don't know how many hours we sat there talking, but no one pulled the trigger. But at the same time, even though nothing happened that night, that was the start of our non-monogamous journey, that experience and that night and
the conversations that followed as the years progressed.
And they became our first and continuous for a long time and led us here.
Yes.
To where we are today.
So this one is not quite as serious maybe as some of them, but
first off, thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Sting for calling in. They have a podcast called Just Keep Swinging.
Yep.
So check that one out.
So my first comment is, for ease of access, you're going to want to go with the tearaway button pants.
I got to say, Mrs. Sting, like your practicality of the sweatpants, I laughed out loud. I was like, well, she's like, we got a job to do. It's called a blow job. So we're going to wear the easiest pants. Like, I thought that was your efficiency. It was cracking me up. You were a lady after my own heart.
I agree. That was priceless.
All right. So this one got started because she was just trying to help a friend out who loved to suck dick, and her husband wasn't into it.
And so I gotta say, love the openness in that friendship.
I know.
That was one of the things that struck me, is that, like, wow, what, just for these women to be able to talk about this and the trust that they must have had with each other, for each other, that's a beautiful thing that you don't hear very often. So I was really, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's not very often that you find that you have a girlfriend that you can go down that road. Like, well, my husband likes blowjobs a lot. You like giving them, but your husband doesn't. And so let's fix that. Yeah. Let's try that.
Well,
you never know.
And then you just come home and you're like, hey, honey, Cindy really wants to give you a blowjob. So.
Right. And again, I mean, I think we maybe experience that once we're, those of us that are in non-monogamy and practicing it, the physical and sexual parts of that. But for girlfriends who are working together to just have that level of openness to talk about it, that really struck me. That was cool.
Yeah. That's the amazing piece, I think, too. Yeah.
It's awesome. I think this one we wanted to play just because it's awesome to hear, like, their dynamic and how open they are as people, and that those types of people are out there. And you can think that the whole of the U.S. is a bunch of puritanical prudes, but I think we've learned that that's not the case.
Yeah. Not everybody that's wearing sweatpants is to be comfortable.
That's true.
That's
true.
Yep.
I will wonder forever, though, if maybe the sweatpants were the reason nothing happened that first night.
Oh, maybe. They're not the sexiest pants. I mean, just to look at. But again, these two admitted their desires to each other. They were not scared to say, here are things. And this is, think about that, 30 years ago, before there was any sort of normalizing to this, to say, I might be a freak, but you need to know me. And then to hear, well, me too. It allowed them to be seen and heard and understood and loved anyway by each other. And probably one of the most important ingredients for their 30-year strong relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
So good work.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, that was awesome.
So thank you again, Stings, for sharing.
Well, and thank you to everyone who called in for the voicemail. We were super grateful to receive all of those. And now we have a couple of, not voicemails, messages, emails that actually came to you, Catherine, from a couple of people. And the first one...
And this was regarding just the question you threw out there. What was the question that you asked the community on your end?
I happen to know that that these two people had been courageous to ask their partner about non-monogamy. So I already knew that they had done it, and I also knew that it had gone well. I know that they are actively practicing it. And so I just said, we're putting together this. What are your lessons? What would be your thoughts, your tips, your, oh gosh, don't do what I did? And these are some of the answers I got from them.
Yeah. So the first one, I guess we'll just read a couple of the bullet points that they sent over.
Yeah.
And it's from, you can say who it's from. He wanted to make sure that I told everyone that he is a very, very attractive and sweet man.
and humble.
And humble.
Oh, yeah.
It's from Mr. Sexy Senior Couple.
Or it could be Senior Couple.
Senior. We don't know, do we? Which accent should you read it in, Emma?
I'm going to leave it the way I had for right now. Okay. How can you explain to your partner that it is not that she is not enough for you, but that you think being non-monogamous would enrich both of your lives even more? That was his first point. Second point, that you are not just doing this so you can sleep with other women, but that you can also enjoy the excitement and shared closeness that comes with non-monogamy. And third point, after listening to podcasts and couples who are in the lifestyle explain how they have become so much closer and communicate so much better, that is what you want for your relationship. Sure, there may be sex involved, but the main thing you are looking for is to build a stronger bond between the two of you. So I think the overall theme for all of those 3 points are the idea that it's a team, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Mr. Sexy Senior Couple said that it was fine for me to share that he is a client, that they're clients of mine. And I think that when I worked with them, that was her biggest fear, was feeling like after being married to this person for a long time, that it almost felt like an ultimatum, or there was a him against her. And then she was worried that it was me and him against her. And I was going to try to push some agenda or something, which of course is not what I do. And so he was asking me to help him get that message across, to explain that I want to talk to my wife the way Mr. and Mrs. Jones talk to each other after being married for 30 years. That we've been married that long, and that's how I want us to talk. And I want that closeness. And again, getting the fear response down of the ultimatum or feeling threatened or pushed, so that she could see this as being a team endeavor, something that could bring them closer. Once that message was clear, then they did all the right steps to move along in this way, where I would say whatever the gauge of successful is, what my gauge would be is that they are participating in activities that they both want to do, and they feel closer doing it, and they are nailing that.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think the other quick piece he brought up was another point later on in his email, said that the person bringing it up should not present it as an ultimatum. I think that's super critical, because you obviously don't want your partner to feel threatened. And it kind of goes back to the team thing as well. But I think it's worth saying and reiterating, because if you set an ultimatum, that obviously it's either move forward and have your partner be okay with it, or you're like nothing else.
It's either we're doing this or we're not going to be together.
Right. I think,
and that's the ultimate fear, is that you want to give that person a safe out. If they start doing it and they're like, hey, I really wanted to try this, but I don't like it. You don't want them to be afraid to come back to you and say, I tried it. I'm not into it. And now they're going to be doing this thing that they don't really want to be doing, because they're afraid if they say no, that you're going to walk away from them. Then
they're not showing up authentically. Right. And that's going to hurt the connection. So absolutely. Yeah. Great point.
Okay. The second one.
So the second one is from Mr. Mark Sexy. Also very humble, Mark. Well done. So the first thing says, when the time comes to make the ask, I would not wine and dine your mate, but I would set the time aside without distractions so you can talk at length. So this is the old butter them up, take them out to a $200 dinner, and then just before the check comes, you're like, oh, by the way, right? And, it makes that whole interaction feel like it was disingenuous.
Or even transactional. Like, well, I bought you this really nice dinner, so you better say yes to whatever question I ask at the end.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of transactional piece. But then there's also, I would encourage you not to set up a situation where it's any kind of power differential, if that makes sense. You're not a kid begging your parent to let you do something. This is one adult partner being brave and vulnerable enough to share themselves. That's powerful. And it's one adult partner to another adult partner. I think the idea of setting aside a time without distractions, making sure that your partner's in a place, this is just like what we talked about with our intentional conversations, making sure they're in a good place to actually hear this. As we talked about with Mike's call-in, check in, like, what's going on with your heart? There's some things that I really want to share with you. Is there anything you want to share with me? Anything going on for you? So being honest that you want to talk about something that's hard, and ask for that safe place to do it, and ask them to be a safe landing place for you to share a vulnerability, but definitely not with wine and $200 check. Or
Yeah.
So great advice, Mark.
Yeah. The other thing that he did touch on too, one of his comments was one item that will come up is STIs. Do the research, know what you're getting into, and be prepared to talk about the risks and having this conversation. I think that's another good point, because, you can be scared about losing your partner, but the other big piece of this is the health risk that is inherent in some of what we're doing. And there's a lot of arguments whether this is riskier or just out dating as a single person in the world, but this is a perceived risk.
Right. Well, and you doing your research a little bit ahead of time, or at least bringing it up that it may be a concern of your partner's, and show that it is a concern of yours, keeps that more in a safe space. Like, okay, this is a concern of both of ours. I'm bringing this up along with the topic of non-monogamy, but I know that this might be a sticking point, and I want to say, okay, well, let's do what we can to be safe. We can take calculated risks, and we can move forward together. Or if that's not an option, well, let's do this how we're comfortable. And if we just go to parties and we only play with each other and never play with anyone else, that's how we choose to do it.
But the point there is making sure that they know it's something you've thought about.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. That both of your sexual health is a priority to you. But again, a little bit of research, but not too much. Because again, if you come with all of these stats, then in some ways it can bring up this question of betrayal. Like, well, what else have you been doing on your phone all this time? I thought you were playing Candy Crush or looking at Facebook or whatever. And meanwhile, you're looking up STI statistics. What else are you hiding from me? So a little bit of research, yes. But again, let the research of this be a team endeavor.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
By the way, in case you didn't know, Emma and Finn are paying me $5 every time I say team. So I'm just trying to get rich.
Yeah.
Say this word a lot.
I thought this was a drinking game.
We should have done that. It's late enough in the day where I am. Is it for you?
It's 1:30 in the afternoon. So.
It's California,
why
though.
not?
It's a little loosey-goosey out here.
It's Wednesday. We can have a drink.
Hump day, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. The last major comment, or last comment from Mark.
Yeah. He said, if your mate turns you down, accept the no gracefully and let it go, realizing you can always bring it up again, say, a year later. And we've kind of touched on this already too, but it's important to reiterate. It also goes back to the team thing. Like, you can let it go just for a little while. You can still put it, bring it up, kind of the drip, kind of, dripping it in here and there, but you can let it go for a little while. Don't bring it up, every day, multiple times a day. Let it be, let it sit. And maybe your partner will do their own research in that time. You never know.
Yeah. Well, and so one example of this that I like to give is if back in episode 2, we talked with Taylor and Ryan. And I mean, the way that they kind of got started was he brought it up basically once a year for a decade.
Yeah.
Before they took the steps to actually make it happen. And if you listen to their follow-up episode, he's got a separate girlfriend now and she's dating a couple. So, right, just because it's a no for the first year or the first 5 years doesn't mean it's a no forever. That's a big piece of it that I just like to make people aware of. That it doesn't necessarily happen overnight.
Yeah, and two things that I'll say from the therapeutic point of view on this is, number one, as I said earlier, if it's a no, don't hear that as a no about you. Like, don't hear the I'm not interested in this and twist it in your head and you're a freak because you are. Allow someone's no to not be personal or about you. Let it just be their experience. And if you are the person that is needing to say no, try your best to say it in a way that expresses that. I don't think you're a freak for wanting to do this. I'm so thankful that you shared it with me, and it's beyond what I'm interested in. And then secondly, if you decide as a couple that the answer is no, don't let the conversation stop there. The desire to figure out what's going on, what maybe was driving this interest in non-monogamy. I've worked with a couple that one is very interested and one is not. And part of what we're digging on is what is he seeking out of this? And as we break it down, part of it is like this feeling of feeling alive, of doing something that isn't the norm, of feeling plugged into something that's going to bring them together, but also for him to feel like he's staying on his edge. And so some people listen to these podcasts and they hear in many of us how this keeps us on our edge to grow and learn and know about ourselves. And keep in mind that non-monogamy is not the only way to do that. There are plenty of other ways to feel more alive within your own skin and to do that together. So don't let your desire for openness and honesty die with a no.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so one other thing that I wanted to share was an email we got, and I'll keep it very vague because this person, obviously, I didn't tell them we were going to talk about it. But basically what the premise is that they had brought up non-monogamy to their partner and they kind of shut it down. So the original person went back and did some reading, found a good book about it, and then gave the book to their partner. And they said, well, they picked it up and every night they would read a couple pages, or they'd read a chapter a week, and then they kind of finished the book and put it in the bedside table and never mentioned it again. And so their assumption was, they're like, well, so it's just never going to happen. It's been 6 months, we're done. Right. And so this kind of goes back to the conversation we had early on here, which is you went and consumed 1,000 podcasts and brought this information, and now they're playing catch up, right? They're playing catch up for probably quite a while. So I think the fact that somebody took the time to, first of all, not just read the book, but finish the book, and they didn't, throw your book out the window, and they're probably just thinking about it, chewing on it, because you've maybe been thinking about it for a year or 2 years or 3 years, and this is the first time that they've ever been presented with this information. That it can take a while to digest something this sort of outside of the box.
Well, it goes against the societal norm a lot of times. I think that's
and
a
it can
big
be
piece.
scary.
Yeah, it can be very scary.
And so to give somebody time to think about it and say, well, yeah, they finished the book. I don't need an answer the next morning, right? It's okay to wait a little while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we end this episode?
Let's see if I can come up with a sentence that has team in it a few times. I feel like I've already repeated myself a lot.
We've kind of, this episode has been maybe a little bit repetitive, but we wanted to drive home the important pieces, I think. And acknowledge too that this is it can be a very scary and vulnerable thing to bring up and talk about. And that's okay. That's okay.
Well, also keep in mind when we're vulnerable is when we have the highest chance for connection. I used to work with incoming freshmen at our local university. And I used to say to them, people often remember friends that they meet in their first week of college during their orientation time. And, why would that be? Well, part of it is because you are coming up and you're in such a vulnerable space. You don't have all your high school buddies. You don't have your family. You feel overwhelmed in a lot of ways. And so in some ways, it's one of the most vulnerable points in your life. And you're with other people that are also equally vulnerable. And then you connect and have this bond that lasts a lifetime in many cases. And so yes, this can be scary, and yes, this can be vulnerable, but I always like to remind people that our deepest and most fulfilling connections come when we're brave enough to be vulnerable. That is Brene Brown all over. If you don't know that name, please go watch her on YouTube. But when we're thinking about this from a couple and bringing this up, the more brave you are to be vulnerable with your partner, and the safer you make it for them to be the same way with you, that's how you're going to get this connection that people are looking for.
Yeah. Whether it's a yes or a no.
Yes,
right? You're going to discover things about you and your partner that you didn't know were there.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, should we
wrap it up?
Convene the team meeting?
Drink!
Yeah.
We'll let people know at the beginning of this that they have to drink every time that we say the word team.
Oh, that would be great. Yes.
Unless they're driving, that might not be the best idea.
Like, say, pause this and go to the beer store and then go home and listen.
Right, exactly.
All right. Well, Catherine, thank you again so much for, everything you've helped contribute to the show and to the community. We're happy to call you a friend, and we look forward to continue to do it, to build awesome resources with you.
Yes, for sure. And thank you to everyone who chimed in on this one. I know we put the call out for a while, so it was awesome to receive all of the tidbits and information. So thank you.
Yeah. And thank you guys for being brave and switching up a little bit of your platform and to offer some more educational ways and hearing from other listeners. I love your original platform, but I think it's fun to add this diversity. So good job. And thank you for letting me be part of it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Well, let's go get that drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go drink some water, get an IV. Jesus. All right.
Bye.
Bye, Catherine.
Bye.
We're back again.
For the last time
of this season of Focus Fridays.
Yeah, it's just like when Stranger Things ended.
It's definitely not the same. Thank you, Catherine, again for coming on another episode, having another conversation with us. And thank you to everyone who called in or wrote in and gave their advice and their story as well.
Absolutely. And once again, thank you to all of the contributors who helped make this first season of Focus Fridays possible. Sorry we named it Focus Fridays. We really couldn't think of a better name.
We really couldn't. We tried.
And so if this is killing your brand, well, we just want to say we're sorry.
But thank you for listening, and thank all the way to the end. Thank you for listening.
And
that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And thank you to any of you who listened to this and are still listening and contributed to the show, helped make the show better by donating when you downloaded it. We seriously cannot thank you enough for that, and we just want you to know how grateful we are. With that, we're going to roll the credits, and we will see you guys on the pilot of season 2.
We'll also see you next week for our normal show on Wednesday.
I don't know if season 2 can have a pilot. I think the pilot is only
I think the pilot's at the beginning anyway.
What are you talking about?
I don't know.
All right. We'll see you guys at season 2, and we'll see you next
also
Wednesday.
next week. Bye. Thank you again.